unfortunately, we don't have an honest society anymore. Our politicians, not all of them, but many of them are blatantly dishonest, and our media is flat out corrupt. And this is very vividly on display with the border situation. So it's no surprise this immigration bill is not going to get passed. We went over it yesterday. It's a bad bill. It's a weak bill. All right? There's no reason to pass it. If you can't do better than that, wait till a new administration comes in November, because this is not going to solve any of the problems. Now, I'm a simple man. You know I'm a simple man. Probably too simple. But here is my essential question, and I've asked it. Who does this bill help? Does it help you, the American taxpayer? Does it help your family? Who does it help? You see, we elect people to do two things: to protect us from criminals and forces overseas that would hurt us, and to provide a society where we can pursue happiness. What does this do? This bill, this monster bill, 370 pages, who does it help? And I have asked that question now. I asked it on News Nation last night. I've asked it to a number of my liberal friends. Nobody can answer it. Nobody. And if you cannot answer that question in any bill, it shouldn't pass. Simple analysis from a simple man. All right, let's advance the story. And that's the subject of this evening's Talking Points memo. So tomorrow, the Senate is set to vote on whether this immigration bill gets advanced to the floor. Don't know what will happen, but it doesn't really matter, because the House of Representatives is not going to vote on the bill, according to the Speaker of the House. All right, there are already 23 senators who say, look, we're not supporting this. So there are 77 who are considering it. 60 are needed to advance the bill to the floor of the Senate. In the meantime, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson says, look, there's just no way. And he's got a variety of excuses, Johnson does, why they don't like the bill. Some of them are valid, some of them are not. There are some good things in the bill. One of the bad things in the bill is that Ukraine aid and Israeli aid from the USA is tied into it. That should never happen. Never in a million years. Those should be separate votes. And I'm going to get into that with President Biden coming up later on the broadcast. Now, here's what you need to understand. So far, in the 3 years Biden's been in office, 3 years and a couple of weeks, the United States government has spent $451 billion on migrants in 3 years. And that doesn't count the state and local expenditures. So they've got to be another $50 billion. So that takes us up to $500 billion, at least, on migrants, on foreign nationals coming here. We have to pay those taxes. We, the working people of America. $500 billion in 3 years. That's insane. Nobody does that. No country on earth comes close to that. It's raise a tax, raise a tax, raise a tax, and then throw away $500 billion. Now, you think I'm a mean guy for saying throw away? None of this had to happen, because Biden knocked out the Remain in Mexico policy, which allowed people to apply for asylum in the USA, but they had to wait in Mexico or their home country, which is the sane way to do it. That's what Trump did. Okay. Now this bill would add at least $20 billion more. So now we're creeping, slouching up to $1 trillion on this. We don't have the money. So taxes are going to have to go up everywhere to support this insanity. Now, the bill, if it had stopped it, would have been worth doing. All they had to do in the bill was say, we're going to suspend all asylum claims, all, for 6 months. Nobody can ask for asylum in the United States for 6 months. So we can reorganize our judicial system, which is backlogged now 3 to 5 years, our border patrol system, our computer system, our housing for migrant system. We need that time to reorganize. That should have been first thing in the bill. And then the other things, the good things, could have then been listed. I would have supported a bill like that. But this one doesn't have any suspension. It just adds layer upon layer of bureaucracy that, believe me, will not solve any problems. The problems will mount. So that's why I don't support it. Plus the fact that it doesn't do anybody any good, as I said. Now, you can get better legislation. The House can write a better bill, putting in the suspension for 6 months. On the top of it, they can do that tomorrow. Johnson, the Speaker of the House, should be working on it now. Don't be Dr. No. Say no to a bad bill, but say we're going to make it better. Because we do need immigration reform here. Absolutely need it. All right. Now, I don't know whether they're working on a better bill or not. I don't know. And that's the memo. So let's get some reaction to this. I believe that this bill was put forth by Senator Schumer, the majority leader in the Senate, who wants to keep that position in November, to give Joe Biden cover. Because everybody knows this whole immigration mess, all $500 billion of it, is Biden's fault. Biden keeps saying he doesn't have the power to stop all of these asylum claims. Yes, he does, by executive order. Trump's Remain in Mexico wasn't passed. It was an executive order. So Biden's not telling the truth. What a shock, right? Okay. First soundbite is Nikki Haley. Go.
The part that I don't like about the bill, it doesn't require Remain in Mexico, which is very important at keeping them from coming on U.S. soil in the first place. And I don't like the 5,000 limit. We don't want anybody to come in. We can't say only when 5,000 people have crossed the border. They need to stay there. They need to figure this out. They need to adjust it, amend it in any way that they can. And they should not leave D.C. until they get us a border bill. And no, we are not waiting until the general election to do this.
Well, that's a fairly intelligent statement, I think. Second one is Fox News, which, as many people know, is kind of a confusing place these days. Roll it.
But here's the problem for you guys. The Border Patrol Union came out, and the acting CBP chief both came out and said it's not perfect, but this is the best thing we've seen in decades. So are Republicans going to say that the Border Patrol Union and the acting CBP chief are wrong?
Well, look, they can have their perspective, Steve, and we've got a lot of respect.
It's their jobs, Tom.
All right. So Mr. Ducey's role now is to counter what the conservative thought is on legislation. It's by design. There's no question. I know Ducey. I mean, I know the system. And the operation, Fox News, feels it needs to have some dissenting voices and not be in lockstep with the Republican Party and Donald Trump. So that's what you just saw there. It's been going on for a while. Okay. The third one is MSNBC, and I'm only using this to show you how insane things are at NBC News. Go.
You have the Speaker of the House, who claims that the Bible guides him, claims that Jesus, I guess, must have told him, I don't know, I didn't read this part of the Sermon on the Mount, but to gain power by lying, to gain power by pushing the big lie. As Liz Cheney said, he was the chief proponent of the big lie. He didn't believe it, but said, I need to do this to get close to Donald Trump. And so he's now going around lying on, I've seen enough. This bill is too liberal.
Is that going to be
I've
his
seen
voice?
enough.
I don't really have to say anything about it. I mean, what they put out every day. Okay. The New York Post is highlighting migrant crime. And there's plenty of it in New York City. You know about the police officers who were attacked in Times Square. Now the cops tell us 14 migrants attacked 2 police officers. We'll get to that in a minute, the details, because some of them have been caught in Arizona. But the New York Post is highlighting migrant crime. I want to know about migrant crime. I live very close to New York City, but I understand that you can demonize migrants by doing this. So most migrants, as we know, are peaceful and they just want a better life. They're not all terrible people. Only a few of them are terrible people. But those terrible people shouldn't be here. We have enough of our own terrible people. And there's no vetting. There's no vetting at all. Biden just, everybody comes in. Anybody who can say the word asylum in either English or Spanish or any other language, come on in. Come on in. We're not vetting you. We don't really care if you're evil. So, the 14 involved, there have been, one out of the 14 is in custody. 5 were released, no bail, New York City. And they picked them up in Arizona, but they won't tell us who they picked up. They should, they being the Arizona authorities. So right now they're in the custody of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which is good. You take them out of New York City because they're never going to get prosecuted under Alvin Bragg, which is a scandal beyond belief, and put them in the federal system. Now, they'll deport them eventually, but they'll come right back. They'll come right back. You think the cartels are going to lay down, even if this bill was passed? It's not going to be passed, but even if the bill were passed, you think the cartels are going to, come on. They just figure out ways around it. Too much money. 25 years, I used to have him on the O'Reilly Factor, and now I've had him on the No Spin News a number of times. Stephen Camarata is the Director of Research for the Center for Immigration Studies. Okay, Border Patrol Union says, good bill, we ought to sign this bill, we need this bill. You say?
I can't speak for them, but it doesn't seem like the bill does the things that we need. It has all kinds of other things that are kind of a Democratic wish list. And I'm not just talking about Ukraine. I'm talking about other things like increasing green cards. But it also puts into legislation and law policies of the Biden administration that have greatly accelerated illegal immigration. So it seems very counterproductive, but I'm assuming what they like is, more resources for the Border Patrol. It's more spending, more hiring, that kind of thing. And bureaucracies usually favor that, regardless of the underlying policy. And that may be what's going on here. Again,
well, the thinking is this is better than the chaos we have now. Anything is better. That's the thinking. Did you read the bill, Steve?
I have reviewed the bill and spoken to people who are attorneys who've gone through it piece by piece.
Okay.
So I've read big sections of it. So,
in your opinion, and we got to keep this simple because people can't possibly understand 370 pages of bureaucratic, what is the most egregious part of the bill to you?
Well, it's extraneous stuff. Why would you give out a whole bunch more green cards? What does that have to do with the border? Why do you allow a policy that's being, here's a great irony, there's a policy that's being challenged by 20 attorney generals that is letting what are called asylum officers, who often are not lawyers or anything, basically grant asylum. This is a new thing the Biden administration essentially created, including the attorney generals who are challenging it are from Oklahoma, where Senator Langsford's from, and also from Kentucky, where the majority leader is from, the minority leader is from. So we have a situation where literally they're putting into law a policy that is being challenged in court because it's making it so easy to get asylum. But probably the most egregious thing is the stuff that everyone's focused on. The border doesn't, quote, get shut down until we get a consistent day after day, like a week, of 5,000 new border encounters. So in other words, we have to get up to the record and then we, quote, shut it down. But keep in mind that that doesn't even happen, because even when it's shut down, and remember, the president doesn't have to shut it down, but he can if he wants, we're still supposed to process 1,400 illegal immigrants and release them presumably into the United States. So we don't have there's a thing called expedited removal. Let you send people back quick. We have a requirement for, say, asylum applicants to be detained. That's being ignored. So we're not using expedited removal. We're not going to be sending people back quickly. We're not going to detain them. As you point out, we had this sound policy, remain in Mexico. We got rid of that. We got rid of the migration agreements we had with sending countries. So what this essentially is kind of, look, here's the thing about the Democrats, and this is not a mischaracterization or a caricature. Their position is everyone in the developing world has the right to apply for asylum in the United States, and if the system is overwhelmed, they should be released into the United States. Right. Now, just so you know,
that's certainly the Biden administration say.
That's the position.
But in the bill, let me play devil's advocate. There are new provisions for getting asylum, and they are: you got to prove that you couldn't move to another part of your own country for safety. You got to prove that you couldn't go to another country, which they can't because they're all marching through Mexico. You're already in another country. So it makes it harder, at least that's what it says in the bill, to get asylum once you get a hearing in the United States, which could be anywhere from 3 to 8 years. And that's not going to lessen, even if they put in more people to adjudicate it. This is just too many right now. But
yeah, two
in the bill, it tightens up what the qualifications for asylum are.
Those provisions are already in the law. You can take into account as an immigration judge whether the person could relocate in their own country. You can, but they're not doing it.
No.
The other thing is you already have it in the law that if a person travels through a safe third country like Mexico and then comes here, they're really country shopping. They're not fleeing for their lives. And remember, that's what asylum is supposed to be. So
right.
There's no reason to believe that the Biden administration would implement something that's already in the books, even if the wording has slightly changed. They still want to let asylum officers play a role in this system of granting asylum, something that's never happened. They were only supposed to be there to weed folks out. In other words, we have all the provisions, or most provisions are already on the books, and they're not being enforced. There's no reason to think that saying them again, in effect, would have that much effect. And remember,
sure, if they're not going to be enforced, and under a Democrat administration, whether it's Biden or Michelle Obama or whoever, the word is going to go out, let them in. Okay, final question. Final question here. Biden is lying, in my opinion, when he says, give me the authority and I'll shut it down. Now, you've been doing this a long time. Trump's remain in Mexico policy was an executive order, correct?
Yes, but we had to negotiate it with Mexico.
Right. I don't even care about Mexico at this point. So if Trump can do a remain in Mexico policy where you couldn't come to the United States and wait for your asylum hearing, could not, okay? Biden can do the same thing. Right?
There's no reason he couldn't. Right. That's a fair point. He could use expedited removal right now. He could use detention. We could re-sign migration agreements. Yes.
And everybody in the media knows he's lying and doesn't challenge the lie. That is really serious.
Right. I mean, the coverage of this without explaining to people that the border was largely under control. It is not the case there was a massive economic deterioration or massive new political oppression in the world, including in Latin America. That's not what caused this. Sure, America's richer. Life is better here. But that was true in 2019. That's not
Kamala Harris knows the root causes, though. She'll explain all that. And you know, Steve, I don't mind the 50,000 more green cards a year. I don't. because there are industries that need labor in the farms and in the service industry. I don't mind that as long as it's legal. But this thing is totally out of control. We appreciate your expertise, Steve. Thanks very much for helping us out.